Alright gang, on to chapter 4. I had the recording crash after I talked for about an hour and 20 minutes and I didn't have the heart yesterday to finish. So let's go ahead and do it again. Why is it not filling the screen? Alrighty, anyways. So we're going to be talking about strings today. And also, most of the things that you can do with a string, you can do with a list. You can think of a string as being a list of characters. There are some differences, but let's go ahead and look at it. So here's what a string is. Something like this, right? S is equal to hello, right? And here's what a list looks like. I tend to use capital L when I'm demonstrating lists because it's easier to spot what it is rather than a lowercase l, which looks like a 1 or something. It's harder to see on the screen when it's not zoomed in. So anyways, here's what a list looks like, right? Red, blue, green, like that. So if you want to access a specific letter in the list, you use its index number, like this. S subscript 0 is H. It would stand to reason that S subscript 1 is going to be an E, S subscript L is equal to 2, and so on. So it's zero-based indexing. Computers usually start counting as 0. So let's do S subscript 1. And when I say subscript, I mean square braces. You can call it the index, you can call it the subscript. I forget which the slides use. We'll spot it real quickly. And S subscript 2 will be the L, right? Which means that S subscript 3 will be the second L. And that's got to be the fourth, right? So 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. And let's just prove that. S subscript 4 is the O. So what's S subscript 5? It's going to generate an error because it's past the end of the list. It's like if you have, 300 apartments and you try to go to apartment 301, that's an error. So S subscript 5, like that. String index out of range. Index is out of range, right? It's past the end of the string. The same notation works with lists. If I want that element, that is subscript 0. That is index 0, right? So list, square braces, 0 is red. List square braces, blue is 1. To get to green, that's going to be 2, right? 0, 1, 2. And if you go past the end of the screen, the end of the list, it's an error, right? So something to note is if the list is 3 long, the highest number you can index is 2 because it starts at 0. 0, 1, 2 is 3 elements, right? Just like if this is 5 long, then 0, you can get up to 4, right? Because 0, 1, 2, 3, 4 is equal to 5. Count on your fingers, but start at 0, 1. I wish you'd let me zoom over. Alrighty, I'll do it like that. Except then I can't easily get to the next screen. Alrighty, give up on that. Alright, so the structure of a string, I don't know why it says this, but an integer cannot be factored into more primitive parts. Yeah, so what? But a string can be, right? A string is composed of individual characters, like that. Hi, there. H is subscript 0. I is subscript 1, and so on. And so the data of the string are the letters, and then the length of the string is the number of characters it contains. Now, string could be 0 long, right? I could say S is equal to there, right? If it's 0 long, you can't even do any indexing in it, right? Because there's no first element to get a hold of. It's like you're trying to get to an apartment. You drive there and there are no apartments, right? can't find that apartment even if you're looking for the first one. If the string is empty, can't get to any of the elements in it. Well, how do you know if a string is empty? Can we type LENS? Yeah, right? The length of that string is 0. But if I set it equal to something else, like hi there, LEN parentheses S, the length of it's 8, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. What if you want to loop through the string? About time to actually start a programming window. Guess we can still call this Lecture G. Planning on doing one more this week, so we have 2 full-length lectures. So anyways, if we have this string, S is equal to Darth Vader. And really, guys, I would like for us to get in a habit of doing our doc strings up at the top, right? So this is Lecture G. You know, I could put my name there. I want you to put your name there. I could just put, you know, CIT1203. And then we're on Chapter 4. And when I'm done, I hope I remember to go back and modify which pages we're on, right? So that's my doc string. And then end my doc string with 3 more quotes. All right, so S is equal to Darth Vader. S subscript 0, if you print that out, right? Print S subscript 0. That's going to print a capital D because that's the first element. Let's add a comment. 0-based indexing, string subscripts. The first one is subscript 0, right? Not subscript 1. So if we ever count out on our fingers and we're a computer, then our first finger is actually going to be a 0, right? 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, rather than 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Pity you can't see my hand. All right, and then the V, well, that's a 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So if I'm going to print S subscript 6, right, like that, that's going to print out the V. What if we want to print them all out? Well, we'd use a loop. 2 ways to do it. We could use a range-based loop, or we could use a value-based loop. In other languages known as a for each loop. Let's do the range-based loop first, where we're going to create a variable that's equal to 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and so on, right? So I need a counter variable. I like to use I for index, right? I could actually spell out the whole word if I wanted to, right? And what range am I going to go to? I'm going to go to the length of the string, so I know how far to go. LEN parentheses S, 2 close parentheses, and a colon. So I'm going to print out the index, and then I'm going to print out the string at that specific position, right? Like that. When all I'm doing is printing 2 numbers side by side, or, you know, whatever, I'm not going to make a formatted string. I guess I could, right? F quote. The index is equal to curly brace index in curly brace, and the string value at that position, that's too long. I'm just going to say element equals curly brace S subscript index in curly brace, end quote, in parentheses. Now we're good to go. And let's watch it go. And so this is Lecture G. Let it run. It printed out our DEV as we expected. And index 0 through 10, Darth Vader. The fact that it counts up to 10 means that it has a length of 11. If you remember in your range statement, if you had range 11 there, it would count 0 to 10. We could even specify that it's starting at position 0 if you wanted to. If you only have one number in the range, it assumes 0. Nothing wrong with specifying that it's starting at 0. Either way works. Or if you just print the string itself, right? S equals, end quote, comma, S, it's just going to print Darth Vader. Or not. Oh, it's down here. Darth Vader. So the form of the subscript operator is the name of the string and then the square braces and an integer, or an integer expression, meaning like it could be a variable or it could be a hard-coded literal number. Using a loop, this just showed you exactly what I did for index and range, parentheses, len, parentheses, data. There's another way of doing it too, shorter. Most often, it's a great way of doing it. This is a range-based or an index-based loop, right? And this is a value-based, right? For every value in the string, print that value. And it's just going to print out the letters. We don't even have an index counter, so I'm not going to bother making a fancy string like this to print the index. We don't have a counter. We're printing out the letters directly. Right? And so it just printed out the letters directly, no index counter. When you use a value-based loop, also known as a for each loop, looks like that. All right. Index-based loop, use a counter, start at 0, go up to the length of the string. Value-based loop, syntax is so much simpler. Even if we were just printing the value, right, I'm going to temporarily delete that and just print the string character at that specific value. If we made it look as simple as possible, that's about the simplest you could do that. The syntax is still cleaner, right? So if you don't need the index, if you don't need that specific number, if you just need the values, you can do that. Well, why would you need to know the values? Well, for example, if you're going to print the ASCII values of it, right? For value in S, print the ordinal value of that value, right? Get the ASCII value of it. Remember, ORD returns the ASCII value. And so there's our ASCII values. Or we could print the value and the ASCII value, right? Just so that we see them. Darth Vader. And the space is 32. And here's all the rest of them. What if we wanted to print the ASCII value in hexadecimal? Can I use a formatted string for that? V, quote, curly brace, print the value in curly brace, print the ordinal value, end curly brace, end quote, in parentheses. Let's make sure that works first. And then I think maybe :X here. I'll print it as an ASCII. Excuse me, as a hexadecimal number. Right. We just happened to luck upon string values that did not have any letters in them. Hexadecimal values that don't have any letters in them. If I go to ASCIItable.com and I look at the ASCII table, for example, Here's the hexadecimal values. If you do something with any J's or K's or L's or M's or N's or O's, right? Like maybe the word money, that have a lot of those. Let's do that again. String equals, quote, money, end quote. And then let's just print the ASCII values. F, quote, curly brace, ORD, parentheses value, and, well, I forgot my for loop, so obviously this isn't going to work. And how's it supposed to be formatted? After the curly, before the end of the curly brace, I put a colon X. Then I can close my curly brace, close my quotes, close my parentheses, and it's going to print out the ASCII values. And why don't I print out the letters as well? Curly brace, value, end curly brace. That'll print out the M and the O and the N and the E and the Y. But it ain't until I put my for loop here, right? For value in S colon, do that. And there we see it, right? So the ASCII values expressed in hexadecimal, MONEY, 4D, 6F, 6E, 6.5, and 7.9. Why the big gap here? Why is this one like 20 larger than the rest of them? It's actually 32, right? 65 and 4D. It's because lowercase letters are the same as the uppercase letters plus a value 32. And I can show you that by redoing the string with all caps, right? If I do S is equal to Darth Vader, and then I print them out again, just with a little judicious copy and pasting. Run it. Right here, it printed out Darth Vader in uppercase letters, and they're all in the 40s and the 50s, right? And then if I did it all in lowercase letters, it would have been in the 60s and 70s. So a lowercase a is a 61, while a uppercase a is a 41. Oh, I'm forgetting that these were in hex. It's actually 32. 20 in hexadecimal is 32. I hope I've adequate. I haven't even really lectured over hexadecimal. Maybe that video did that I had y'all watch. I need to double check it. Okay, so the ASCII value of a lowercase a is a 97, and the ASCII value of an uppercase a is a 65. 65 plus 32 is 97. We go look at ASCIItable.com, we'll see that, right? 66 is a 98. 67 is a 99. Again, they're just 32 different. Let's make a comment that colon X prints a hexadecimal value or number. So what if you want more than one character? You can use what's known as slicing. Slicing is when you have a syntax that has between the square braces a colon, right? Like 0:2 or 2:6, things like that. So if I did this, you know, S is equal to John Q. Adams, end quote. And I just want the name John, right? I don't want anything else. So I'm going to say first is equal to, like first name, S subscript. What's the position of that one? 0. Whoops, why did I change that, right? And how many are we going to go out? Well, we want 4 characters. So 0 plus 4 is 4. How about the middle? Well, where's that position? I believe it's 5, but let's count it out. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, except I started counting at 1. I know better. 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So I'm going to start at 5, and how long is that? That's just one character. 5 plus 1 is 6. Another way to think about it is that just like the range statement, the upper number is one past where you want to stop. So 0:4 means get characters 0 to 3. 0, 1, 2, 3. So that'll get out John. I kind of like this is equal to however many past this one. Let's do that one more time to get the last. Last is equal to S subscript. What's that position? I think it's a 7, but let's count them. 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. There we go. So S subscript 7. And how long is this last name? It's 5 characters. So 5 plus 7 is 12. So 7:12. And let's print them out, right? Print, parentheses, F quote, end parentheses. So first equals curly brace first, in curly brace. Let's just do the middle and the last as well. So I'm going to use some judicious copy pasting and change it to middle and last. Middle, last, middle, last. So eventually it's going to get down here in John Quincy Adams, right? So that's slicing. Slicing is using the subscript to specify a starting and ending position of the index. Example. String 0:2 get you characters at positions 0 and 1. String subscript 3:6 get you characters at positions at index 3, 4, and 5. So again, that's one past where we really want, right? I'm going to move this string cut down to the actual places where I use it, like that. So you can use all of this stuff with lists as well as strings. You can use slicing in lists, right? I'm going to make a new list. And I'm going to use that number that I repeat over and over because it's easy to type. 8, 6, 7, 5, 3, 0, 9. Like that, right? Jenny's phone number. Well, the first 3 elements of the list are the prefix, right, and the last 4 are the other part of the phone number. That's why we separate it by a dash, whatever. People don't really think in terms of prefixes anymore. We all use long distance numbers. So anyways, so first, hey, come back, is equal to the list. I want the first 3. So we're going to start at position 0, and we want 1 and 2. So we need to put a 3 in the 3rd place. Or we just say I'm starting at 0 and I want 3 characters. So 0 plus 3 is 3. And then the last part, right? Those 4. I think I'll just call it first 3, and last 4 is equal to L colon. It's 4 long, so 4 plus 4 is 8. So 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. Well, I did that wrong. That would go from there to 1 past it. That would crash. Really, the position of these last 4 starts at 3, right? 0, 1, 2, 3. So let's make that a 3. And I still want 4 characters, so 3 plus 4 is 7. Then I can print those out, right? Print the first, print the last. Oh, sorry, print first 3 and last 4. First 3, last 4. There we go. 867 5309. Let's put some blank spaces in here, all right? Print like that, just to have a blank occasionally. Break this stuff up. We got too much output on the screen. That's probably about enough. All right, that makes it a little clearer, right? That's money, first, middle, and last, first 3, last 4. Notice this format that it printed it in. If you print out a list just with a print command, you don't take any care to print it any other way, this is what you get. Square braces and values, so-called elements, separated by commas. What if you don't want that? There's other ways you could print these things out. You could use what's known as join. Print parentheses, and I'm going to just put 2 quotes here, and I'm going to put a dash in there. So quote, looks kind of like a smiley face, doesn't it? Join parentheses, the first 3 in parentheses, in parentheses. Why 2 parentheses? Because we have an open parentheses there and a second one, so we got to close them both. Now what's that going to do? It's going to print the elements 8, 6, and 7, the first 3, but they're going to be separated by dashes. That's what .join does. .join takes a list and converts it to a string. What if you didn't put anything, right? That's the separator. When we run it, it's going to look like this. I'm going to copy and paste the results into the notes. Or it's going to crash. I did something wrong. And I'm not understanding the error. What happens if I just put the whole number in there? Print the entire list. Well, okay, fine. Python list join. Go and get an example. Oh, my mistake. It has to be a list of strings for that to work. You can't use .join on a list of numbers. It has to be a list of strings. But it is a list of strings. I really thought I understood this. I've been using that for years. How about giving me just a good example rather than a theoretical example? Here's our example. I'm going to copy that and paste it and try to figure out what's different between it and mine. Separator.join. I mean, I could copy that exactly, right? Separator is equal to, and I don't want to convert everything. So it's got dashes. And then I could put separator.join, parentheses L. Isn't that going to be the same? Oh, it really isn't a list of strings. My mistake. If I make these strings, it will work. Like that. All right, now it's going to work without an error. And if I leave this list in here, it's going to do it anyways, right? So here we get 8675309 because that was our separator, right? Dashes. Let's do the same thing. Normally, I don't stick this in a separate variable. Nothing wrong with doing that. Separator is equal to empty quotes, right? So if I do the same thing, print the separator dot join of the list, right? Then it's going to print it out with nothing between them. And I do want to copy and paste the results into comments. Right. So the results of that are 8, 6, and 7, which means that the results of this are going to be the 5309. Now let's look at the dot join. We better change this comment though to not merely converts a list to a string. We're going to say that dot join converts a list of strings to a string. Like that. Let's go and grab that result as well. That looked like that. And since the separator was an empty string when we did it, it just looked like that. And when we did this one, since there were commas between them, the output was, why don't I put a space there, make it a little bit easier to read. A 1, 2, 3, 4. All right, this is going to be silly. Separator equals I'm getting tired of typing it like that. Print, parentheses, quote, space, and a. So it's going to say 1 and a 2 and a 3 and a 4, right? dot join the num list to close. So it's going to print 1 and a 2 and a 3 and a 4. Silly, but let's do it. We could even prefix it with the word a, right? Like a 1 and a 2. So let's do that. A, end quote, comma, quote, and a 2 and a 3 and a 4. A 1 and a 2 and a 3 and a 4. I don't know if that looks better or not. Why don't I just get rid of that part? Copy the results. All right, I hope that makes sense. All right, what if I had needed to convert that list of numbers into strings? I could have done it, and I could have done it in a couple of different ways. I'm going to show you the long way. I'm going to create a list of numbers, 100, 200, 400, 800, and I want to convert those to strings for whatever purposes, right? Let's print a blank line first. And then let's print that list out. L, end quote, comma, L, right? Or L space equals. Now let's make a new list that's going to be those converted to strings. And to do that, if we don't mind overriding this list, we could use indexes, right? When we're done, we're going to have erased the list L and replaced it with a list where all the values are strings. We might want to instead make it so that we had a copy of the list, right? So that we would still have our original data, if you cared. In this case, I don't think I do, so I'm going to use an index, range-based loop. For I in length, parentheses L, in parentheses colon, list subscript I equals the string version of list subscript I, right? We're converting those numbers to strings. And then when we print out L afterwards, L equals, comma, L. That looks wrong. It looks like I left out a quote. Int object not iterable. Oh, I forgot the word range, didn't I? I even said it, and I didn't type it in. So for I in range, parentheses, len, L, in parentheses, like that. Of course, we could take these parentheses out. Let's let it go. All right, so before it was a list of numbers. Afterwards, it's a list of strings. Now that took several lines to do, right? It took 2 lines. I guess that's not that bad. But we could have done it in one line, doing the same thing with what's known as list comprehension. Let's create a new list of numbers. 1, 2, 3, 4. Oh, that looks too sequential when we print it out. It looks like a for loop or something. 11, 20, 900, 1,000, whatever those numbers are. We want to convert that to a list of strings. Convert to a list of strings with what's known as list comprehension. Here's where we converted it to a list of strings. with a for loop and str, right? That's what we did here. Guess I could copy and paste the result of this and the next one. That's what it looked like when we printed it out here. Just like that, huh? And then when we did it again, when we printed it out after it had been converted to a string, we saw that each element had apostrophes around it. When they do output of strings, they just use apostrophes. We could be using apostrophes everywhere rather than double quotes. Like that. Doesn't matter. I'm going to undo that. For some reason, I like double quotes. Actually, I know why. It's because in every other programming language I've used, strings are done with double quotes. C, C++, Java, things like that. Basic. Alrighty. Here's how you do it with list comprehension. L is equal to, and then you use square braces. And the syntax is going to look weird at first, but then it's going to make sense. str ch in subscript for ch in L. Except earlier we used value, right? So we're going to take the string version of each value for every value in that list. And so if we print the list afterwards, we should have printed it before as well, right? I'm going to print L like that, and then I'm going to print it after we have converted it. And we're going to see that it's now a list of strings. Or not, because I used square braces rather than parentheses, right? It's a function call that needs parentheses. So you can do this for any list, right? Not just to convert, right? Like say you wanted to add 1 to every element in a list. We'll do that in a minute. We'll take 8675309 and we'll add 1 to every element, or we'll double the numbers or something like that. All right, so we changed it from 10, 20, 900, 1000, where every element in the list was a number, so we don't see any quotes, to a list of strings, so we do see the apostrophes. And this will be the same, but without the apostrophes. So I'm just copying and pasting and removing the apostrophes. Hope that makes sense. Let's make another list so that we can continue to play with the idea. New sequence of numbers: 3, 1, 4, 1, 5, 9. Now let's use list comprehension. L is equal to square braces, value plus 1 for value in L, right? So if we print out the list beforehand, you know what we could do? We could say that L2 is equal to that. And so then we could print out our lists. Don't know why I did the initial cap. Print F quote L is curly brace L in curly brace end quote in parentheses. Do the same thing for L2. Print F quote L2 is curly brace L2 in curly brace end quote in parentheses, right? I could have been doing that all along too, right? Maybe I wanted to make this say L and L2. Then I could put my print statements underneath everything so that those are kind of grouped together, right? And then I can move my comment above that block of code. I'm just trying to make it as readable as possible. But so in this case, I created a brand new list based on the values in that list. Here, I just modified the values of the list themselves. Hope that makes sense. Let's run it, and we're going to see 3, 1, 4, 1, 5, 9. And since we're adding 1 to it, we're going to see 4, 2, 5, 2, 6, 10. All right, cool. All right, now I'm going to, for no good reason whatsoever, except just as a reminder that we should be doing things this way, I'm going to define all of this as a function, meaning I'm going to have to tab it over. So I'm going to take all my code here. Well, that sure is taking a long time. You know, my Mac is amazingly fast. I know I've said this before, but idle is amazingly slow on it. And when I say amazingly fast, it's not like a PC gaming machine, but it's not a slow machine. It's got a good processor in it. Everything else runs fast except for idle. All right, so I highlighted everything. I tabbed it over. I'm going to scroll up to the top, and I'm going to define this as a main function, right? def main, parentheses, in parentheses, colon. So this is my function. Now down at the bottom, I'm going to call my function. So I'm going to use that if underscore 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 business. If underscore underscore name underscore underscore equals equals underscore underscore quote main. Wait, I put the underscores in the wrong place. Equal quote underscore underscore main. Oh, come on. Main underscore underscore end quote colon. Like that. Then call the main method. I'd kind of like to see y'all turn in your homework like that, but you don't have to, right? And so when you do things like that, you can even break things up like def join underscore example end on parentheses in parentheses colon, right? And so when we want to do the join example, we just call that, right? Join example, like that. And then what was this? This was a list comprehension example. So def list underscore comprehension underscore example. That's a long name. Parentheses in parentheses. Since it is a long name, I'm just going to copy it. Like that. So now the code is broken up into chunks. What is this? Using list comprehension. Demonstrate joining lists into strings. Into a string. Where each element of the list, or where you can specify the separator. Or where you do specify. Tab that over. All right. I'm going to remove the word there. So, demonstrate joining lists into a string where you specify the example. The syntax is separator.join parentheses list, right? Like that. And here's our examples. We had to have had more than one example. Okay. This one needs to be modified, copied and pasted underneath our function definition, right? So I'm going to come down here, copy and paste that. All right, so now we have two .join examples. Did we have even more than that? No, I think we're good. All right, so we have a main method. I'm going to change the name of that to string and list examples. String and list examples, like that. Then I'm going to come down here and change main to string and list examples, right? And what I showed y'all in the past is actually making a main. So def main, that space between the parentheses is not necessary. And then just call these 3 lines of code, these 3 functions, from within main. And then inside the if statement, down here at the bottom, we just call our main function, right? Like that. So we have a docstring for that function. List comprehension examples, where you build a new list based on the values of an old list. Quote, quote, quote. And what was the last one? No, I guess I lined them up like that, so just being picky, but I'm kind of showing you how it would be nice if you formatted your homework with comments. This will be the last week where I'm going to accept poorly commented code. Right after this, I want you to add a comment block up at the top. If you have functions in it, I want you to define your functions. So what's this comment going to be? It's going to be demonstrate accessing elements of a list by their subscript and using for loops. That's what we were demonstrating there. All right. Now that I did all that, if I wanted to, show that a little bit longer. Anyways, we have broken it up into 3 subsections, right? We've demonstrated string and list examples. We have demonstrated join.join. And we have demonstrated list examples. Meaning that down in main, if we get tired of seeing all the list and string examples, we could just comment this call out, right? Or to blow up, but that's okay. That just means that when I was doing my copying and pasting, I lost my list. So what line was that? Well, I need to see my line numbers. Options, show line numbers. All right, now if I go back and look at my error message again, I'll see what line number it's on. Guess I didn't need to run it again. Anyways, it's complaining about line 128. Let's go look at 128. Well, it didn't like the fact that we called main. Let's go look again. Usually it's the top error, and I think I went to the long error. You know what? I know what it is. I shouldn't be doing this, but anyways. So L is not defined in line number 83. That's ultimately the big problem. So let's go look at line 83 and find out why L is not defined. Because that was my string, but I didn't define it. I must have defined it somewhere else. Yeah, let's copy that again, just so we have it. Good idea to have the list defined above the examples anyways, right? All right, now it runs, and if we're tired of watching all that first stuff, we can just comment out the first call. Speed things up, all right? And heck, I can comment out the second function, and so the only function we call is list comprehension examples. Much faster. All right, and this as usual. What is this doing? For every value in the name list, because this file list is a list of file names, check it. Check to see if .text is in that file name. If it is, print it out. Okay, so let's add a new section up here. DEF for loop list examples. Gonna have more of those. Let's make a list to play with. L is equal to, put Star Wars characters in here. Luke, in quote, quote, Darth, in quote, quote, Han, in quote, Rey, in quote, and BB-8, quote, in quote. Let's make those all uppercase as we print them out. So, for every value in the list, for value in list, colon, print L dot upper. I think that's how you do it. Parentheses in parentheses. I may have to look that up. Well, I don't know for sure because I forgot to put a call to it. So down here in main, I need to call the for loop list examples. Parentheses in parentheses. Doesn't work if you don't call the functions. Hope I'm not muddying up the examples by doing that. Ooh, list object has no attribute upper. Well, that's because I was trying to print the values, right? That's my variable, so that needs to be value. Let's see if that really helps. All right, and so here's Luke, Darth, Han, Rey, and BB-8 all in uppercase. So dot upper converts a string to uppercase, right? Put that comment there. And of course you can do the same thing for lowercase, right? I'm just going to copy, paste, and change them to lowercase, right? So value dot lower converts a string to lowercase. There we go. Luke, Darth, Han, Rey, BB-8. Luke, Darth, Han, Rey, BB-8. Let's do something else with it. Let's only print out the ones that have A's in them. So, for value in L colon, if quote A end quote in value. So if there's an A in that value, print it out. Value comma has an A end quote. I'm going to put apostrophes around that so it'll print it out, right? Value has an A. Why did I use apostrophes rather than double quotes? Because if I put a double quote here, it'll think that I ended the string, right? And so now this is a different color. That'd be a syntax error. Else, colon, print, parentheses, value, comma, quote, has no A, end quote, in parentheses. And I could do this in the other style, right? F, quote, curly brace, value, in curly brace, has an A. Do the same thing down here. So it's going to print out whether that string has an A or no A in it, because this is really important. Here we go, right? Luke does not have an A. Darth does have an A. Han does have an A. I like just calling him Darth because that covers, like, 70 million characters in the Star Wars universe. Han, Rey, and BB-8. There we go. Rey didn't have an A, neither did BB-8, but Han does have one. So note that syntax. So the in keyword checks to see if a value is in the string or list. Let's just say string. Let's do the same thing with some numbers. For Rose's main desk phone number. Well, gosh, that didn't pop out easy. How about Google's phone number? Should have used 8765309. Alrighty. So there we go. This is going to be our phone number. Our list is going to be composed of those values. So for the value in quote, right? Like that. What are we going to do? What are we going to do this? We could turn them into strings. We could turn this into a list, right? So list 1, 8, 5, 5, 8, 3, 6, 1987, just because I'm tired of adding commas. Right, there we go. And we're going to check to see if the number is evenly divisible by 2. How do you know if something is evenly divisible by 2? You modulus it by 2, and if the remainder is 0, you know it was. So, if value modulus 2 equals 0, colon, is it even? Then print, parentheses, f quote, curly brace, value in curly brace, is even, end quote, in parentheses. And if it's not even, we know it's odd. Print f quote, parentheses, value, end quote, is odd, in parentheses, end quote, in parentheses. So we're just checking all the values, and we're going to find out which numbers are even. There's really only going to be 2 of them, maybe 3. That 8 and that 8 and that 6 are even. And that is the case, right? 8, 8, and 6 are even, and the others are odd. So you're starting to see the use, I hope, of the, well, of the in syntax, write that, if A in value, and of the loops in general, right? Value-based for loops. What did they do? They had a list of file names, right? F names is equal to square braces, quote, test.txt, end quote, comma, file.exe, end quote, comma, my.ini, end quote, comma, data.txt, end quote, in curly brace. And we're only going to print out the files that have the extension of .txt. So yet another loop for value in fnames, colon. And by the way, if you're doing your homework and putting things inside these functions is messing you up, like you're forgetting to tab everything over inside a function or whatever, then you can just reverse that decision, right? And right now, we're not writing anything that absolutely requires functions. So you don't have to break up your programs like this. But if I asked you to do 3 things, you could put thing 1 inside a def and things 2 inside another function and thing 3 inside another function if you wanted to break it up like that. So for every value in f names, if quote .txt end quote in value. So if there's a .txt in that value, we're going to print it out, right? That's good enough. And so we had 2 .txt files in that list of file names. All right, so our homework. Here's the very first thing we did, pretty much. Well, not quite. def more underscore string underscore examples, parentheses in parentheses colon. Notice that I unindented that completely. Let's define a string, right? Name is equal to, John, Jimmy, Bob, Roberts, right? Dude's special. He's got 2 middle names. Gonna write code that just prints out the initials, right? So what position is that? That's a 0. I should make comments of this because I'm not going to remember. That's a 0. What position is that? Well, let's just go. 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. So 5 and 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. 5 and 11 and 15. So let's print out those characters, right? Print name subscript 0 in subscript. Print name subscript 5 in subscript. You see what we're doing? We're just printing the initials. Print parentheses name subscript 11 in subscript, and print name subscript 16 in subscript. All right, so that's going to print the initials. Why don't we also just print out the whole name, right? Just so we can compare. Now I need to add this to my main function so that it actually does it. Just going to copy that line. Not the whole line, leaving the def out. And I'm going to call that function. Or if I'm going to be all fancy, I'll say I invoke that function down here. And let's make sure that it prints out JJBR. Right? Okay, I goofed. I printed out the O. So whatever number I put in there was 1 off. 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. What'd I do? Put a 16? Yep, I sure did. 15. All right, now I'm going to do the same thing, except I'm going to print the full names out using slicing. So I know that the names start at the same positions, right? So I can keep that much. But to use slicing, I need these colons inside the subscripts. Again, the spacing is just to make the code prettier. If you don't think the code is prettier that way, you can fix it. Okay, now John is 4 characters long. 0 plus 4 is 4. Jimmy is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 characters long. 5 plus 5 is 10. Bob is 3 characters long. So 11 plus 3 is 14. And Roberts is 1, 2, 3. It looks like 7. So 15 plus 7 is 22. So there we go, right? JJBR, John, Jimmy, Bob, Roberts. That worked. All right, so what's our homework going to be? Homework. Define a list of movies or book titles or TV shows or, favorite foods or whatever. And name that list L. Use a for loop, a for index in range, loop, right, to print out the list. So I'm going to change this to say use an index or a range-based for loop. A range-based for loop. And then I'm going to clarify with quotes that this is a for index and range loop, right, to display the list. There are examples of that up here in the top. Just like that. Okay. That's in the string and list examples. Then, I guess I could actually use caps, sentence caps, right? Use a value-based for loop. And we've done plenty of examples of this to display the list. Use a value-based for loop to display only the elements of the list that have an E in them. So if you don't put any E's in your list, it'd be nice if at least one of them did, right? I hope at least one element of your list has an E in it. So it's possible that that won't take you very long. That's okay. Let's do one more thing. Use .join to print the list with the separator being a hyphen, right, a dash. We did that as an example as well. So those are our tasks. The first one involves strings. No, wait. Where'd the business about names and initials? Oh, I guess I did not do that. Okay. So these are tasks that involve lists. And now we're going to have a task or two that involves a string. So that's all kind of part one. This is part two. Using this string definition, S is equal to when in the course of human events, use indexing to print the first letter of each word, and then use slicing to print each word on its own line. Do this with slicing as shown in, let's go find our examples of that, right? The more string examples, and not a for loop. All right. Part 1 and Part 2. I hope that makes sense. If it does not, text me and ask for clarification. Alrighty, I'm going to end the lecture here, and I will see y'all next lecture.